Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Ryan Pronzinski of Christ Lutheran Church in Michigan Center, Michigan. And this is my Chair Chat Daily Devotional for Saturday, May 30th, 2020. Peace be with you. I apologize for this getting to you later today. I was actually out on my fishing kayak today, pretty much just putzing around. They call it fishing for a reason because it's not always catching, which I did not do today. I also say welcome to my pandemic at-home haircut that I did myself. It feels good to get that hair off from around my ears. All right, back to the actual devotional. I hope you all humor me in my aside there. So, as always, these videos are intended to help you engage your life of faith during this time of pandemic. With that in mind, I encourage you to leave constructive comments, questions, or prayer requests in the comments section below, and I promise you that I will get to those comments, questions, or prayer requests in the following videos. The readings that are used each day in these videos come from the Daily Revised Common Lectionary, which is a church calendar reading schedule, and it can be found online. The readings for today are Psalm 33, verses 12 through 22, I will not be reading that today, but for details, please see May 28th's video, where I've read it and shared some thoughts. The other two readings are Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 21, and Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. Before I get to the readings themselves, as always, I'd like to invite you out there that watch these videos to come and join us at Christ Lutheran Church for Sunday morning worship, where we have been live streaming our services with Facebook Live, and the link to those videos can be found in the description below. The live streams happen at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but even if you can't come and join us for the live stream, they are recorded and posted to be able to view later, and I encourage you to do that if you can. So please join us. All right, all that being said, we move on to the first reading, which comes from Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 21, which reads as follows, which this should sound very familiar to most of you. Then God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing children for the iniquity of parents to the third and fourth generation of those who reject me, but showing steadfast love to the 1,000th generation for those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not acquit anyone who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or your daughter, your male or your female slave, your livestock, or the alien resident in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. Honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or male or female slave, or ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. When all the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the sound of the trumpet and the mountains smoking, they were afraid, and trembled and stood at a distance, and said to Moses, You speak to us, and we will listen. But do not let God speak to us, or we will die. Moses said to the people, Do not be afraid, for God has only come to test you, and to put the fear of him upon you, so that you do not sin. Then the people stood at a distance, while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. Here ends the reading. Now I know that as I finish this reading, that Matthew 5, 1 through 12, which comes after this in our readings today, is the Beatitudes. Okay, so we have the Ten Commandments in Exodus right now, and we'll have the Beatitudes from Jesus in Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 12 in the next reading. Now, why I'm drawing your attention to that is because the comparison between these two readings is really important. Because they speak to God's character and heart for you and for all people. You see, the Ten Commandments are not meant to limit life. In fact, I've read many rabbis' interpretations of the Hebrew Bible, our Old Testament, and they talk about the Ten Commandments and God's law as intended to cultivate salvation, right? Eternal life. A system of life where all of life, not just people, but all of life can thrive. The Sabbath being a part of that. We know, for farmers, that if you keep planting and tilling and harvesting the same land over and over and over again without ever letting it rest, that you use up all the nutrients and the ground is destroyed, possibly permanently, right? So even the ground, even the earth itself needs rest. And so the Ten Commandments are not meant to limit life. Sometimes we hear rules and we think that all these rules are just, especially now as we're being instructed to do lots of things that are limiting, that we think that these rules are intended to limit life, right? But they're not. The Ten Commandments are intended to create a system of life that can thrive. The Ten Commandments are not meant to bound us, but to free us, right? I often tell people when they hear this, that sounds crazy because they sound like limits. But I say to them, if when you left your home, you felt like everyone around you was free to hurt you, murder you, steal from you, do all these things that are in the Ten Commandments that God instructs us not to do. If you felt like people were always going to do that, would you feel free? Well, no, I wouldn't feel free. I said exactly. Without law, without rules, right? That's called anarchy. It's chaos, and that is the opposite of freedom. And so, again, the Ten Commandments are intended to give life for all, that causes life that is thriving, and not to bound, but to free us. Because when we trust that we won't be murdered, when we trust that our relationships won't be watered down or abused, when we trust that our belongings won't be taken from us, when we trust that we will be well spoken of and that the truth will be told and not hidden, right? And when we trust that who we are will be valued and not simply what we have and what we can do for other people, when we trust all these things to be true, not just for ourselves, but in our society, and we see them happening, that is in fact when life thrives. When we don't see these loving actions taking place, life does not thrive, and anger, violence, and chaos ensue. And to just bring it into contemporary times, current times, right now, this week, right? Just look at what's going on in Minneapolis right now. With the death of George Floyd, another unarmed black man killed. We witnessed as a nation, and if people are watching it around the world as a world, we watched a man murdered. And it's sadly only one of many that have taken place over years and years. And, the black community, or the communities of color in our nation specifically, they don't see people in positions of power valuing them and who they are. At least not on the same level as white people and people of means. Nor do they feel seen or heard right? That's what protests are all about. You take all the individual voices that definitely don't feel heard or seen, and you try and put them all together and shout as loud as you can so that people will finally hear you, see you, feel the pain and outrage you are feeling, because how could you not? You just watched a man get murdered. And so they are both deeply grieved and outraged, and rightfully so. And we can see the years of pain from racist structures overflowing into the streets this week, with all the protests and rioting. And so this is why the Ten Commandments become important. They are about creating a community where all human life is treated with love, dignity, and respect. All human life. All human life. Regardless of race, social status, gender, or any other human distinction. God desires for all people's lives to thrive, not just exist, not just be quiet and just go with the flow, but no, for all life to thrive and to be free from fear of mistreatment or actual mistreatment and abuse and harm itself. Justice, peace, and thriving life happens as we uphold equitable ways of living as laid out in the Ten Commandments, right? When we all abide by these things equally. However, we human beings often fail at living into these commandments. And so God needs to step in and help us in Jesus Christ and be the transformation agent that we all need. And I would even add, as we get ready to celebrate Pentecost tomorrow, that Jesus too breathes on us his own Spirit, the very Spirit of God, onto us people to inspire, to equip, to call us to be better, to light a fire in us for justice and peace for all humanity. Because clearly, with just the rules themselves, we fickle, feeble, selfish human beings often fail and sin and fall short of who God has made us to be. And so I bring all this up about Jesus coming and stepping in and being a transformation agent for us, because we see that taking place in the Beatitudes today, which is the next reading. And so let's read them. Matthew 5, verses 1 through 12. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil things against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." Here ends the reading. Here in Matthew, Jesus speaks the truth to us about our corrupt, racist, and sinful structures that exist especially here in the United States of America today, but similar structures of injustice existed in Jesus' day and age under the oppression of the Roman Empire and the corrupt Jewish temple system, right? They had their own issues as well, where their own family, right, in Samaria, right, just because that they weren't worshiping at the temple in Jerusalem anymore, became ostracized and outcast, right? Think of the Samaritan woman at the well. They had their structures too. Here, Jesus speaks to the truth about our human, corrupt, racist, and sinful structures that we create. How we conduct ourselves as human beings often leaves people poor, mourning, powerless and voiceless, hungry, thirsty, slandered, persecuted, wanting nothing but justice and peace. Not millions of dollars, not mansions, not fancy cars, just justice and peace. Just to be able to know that when your children go out for a walk, that they won't be harmed by the people that are supposed to protect them. For these voiceless, powerless, persecuted, lost little and least, these downtrodden people, for the people that cry out from underneath the crushing weight of oppression, that say, I can't breathe. Jesus today says, blessed are you. Blessed are you. For what God and I, Jesus, are doing is yours forever. And you will see justice and mercy and peace and comfort and a great reward with me in my kingdom. Yes, as we people of privilege fail people and communities like George Floyd in Minneapolis, Jesus promises to never fail them. This promise of God's presence and peace is God's gift to them. And for us who do sit in positions of privilege and comfort, we are called today. We are called by Jesus to be peacemakers. That doesn't simply mean to live peaceably and contently by ourselves, but to make peace for others. To be peacemakers and agents of mercy and justice for those whose necks are being crushed by the oppressive systems we have benefited for far too long. Jesus says, if you want to see my face today, go and make peace for people like George Floyd. As you feel the pain his family and friends and community feels, and you seek to bring them peace and justice, you will see my face in theirs, and you will see God's kingdom breaking through. I just want to end by sharing what I have learned this past week in an online continuing education class that I took. And it seems so timely, as this class started well before all of these deaths with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. This is what I learned. This is the line that stood out to me that our presenter shared several times. Racism is the lasting legacy of white supremacy upon which this nation was built. Racism is the lasting legacy of white supremacy upon which this nation was built. The original sin of this nation is white supremacy, and all the racist structures that followed and continue to follow because of it. And until we repent of the sin of white supremacy by listening to our sisters and brothers of color and work to dismantle these structures with their help, we will not see life thrive as God would have it. And until life is thriving for all people, including our sisters and brothers and communities of color, life will not be thriving for us either. We will only live in an illusion of thriving life. And so our call from Jesus today is to be peacemakers that seek justice for the oppressed. For this is holy, sacred work. If you would like to join me in becoming a better ally for racial justice, I ask that you leave a comment. If you know my email or find my email, shoot me an email. If you're my friends out there and you have my phone number, give me a call. I am trying. I am working to become a better ally for my oppressed brothers and sisters of color. And lastly, I want to say thank you for letting me lament in this space today. For those of you who watch, my heart is breaking. My heart is breaking. I'll end by saying this, a prayer, if you will. God, be with the families of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and for all who are suffering due to oppressive racist systems and structures in our country. Give them the peace and the justice that they deserve. Help all of us begin to see you in the faces of our sisters and brothers of color, and work to be better allies for them and for you. Amen. I will talk to you Monday.